changes, and then I'll upload this at the end of the day. Or actually, probably fairly soon. I should figure out how to do that pretty quickly. So here's what you start with, right? M9. I don't care about these because I don't want the force change with me here. I just want the camera. Control E to show the block diagram. And I don't know if you missed this, but I'll go over it again. This loop is image acquisition. Actually, yeah, I'm going to kind of start over. So anybody who missed the first part that wants me to start from the beginning, I'm going to start from the beginning. So this top loop is image acquisition. This second loop is basically force acquisition. This is linear actuator controls. Don't mess with that unless, unless you know what you're doing. And this is basically taking the stress you calculated and the strain you calculated, or I pointed the wrong one, stress you calculated and strain you calculated, and making arrays of them over time and plotting them in an XY graph. Now the reason we don't do all of those in the same loop is because the force acquisition rate is not the same as the camera acquisition rate. So basically if we were to put them in the same loop, actually I don't know if it would work at all, but if it did, we'd have different values for stress, or different lengths of arrays for stressing and strain, so we couldn't plot that. So what we have is these little symbols called notifiers. What these are doing is basically every, whatever this timer is, 100 milliseconds, it's taking the last value of strain you calculated and the last value of stress you calculated and bringing them down here and putting them into the loop at the same time. Basically to make sure that everything's synced up. So the way we're going to basically handle these together is we're going to, I kind of went over on the last on how to calculate, or I just said force. Basically acquire force. There's probably an easier way to do this, but to get force without getting any errors, I went over that, and that's in the example, and I can go over it again at the end if you want. But you're going to calculate strain there and output it, or stress there and output it, and it's going to bring it down there. And you're going to calculate distance versus distance strain, and then you're going to delete these indicators. They're only here to allow the program to run, because it can't do it if there's an empty or a broken line, and you can't label a broken line. So it's just here as a placeholder until you end up calculating your strain. Or you can do distance here and then calculate strain down here. Doesn't matter, that's why it says strain / distance. Or however you want to do it. But first I'm going to start with, I'm not a huge fan of the way SE talked about in class doing his image acquisition, or not his image acquisition, his, basically how he filtered his image to get the particles. I'm going to show you how, but there are a million ways to do it, and I just like one better. So I'm going to show you how he does that, and, that's what made it pink earlier. So I'm going to show you how he does that, and then how I like to do it, and then I'm sure when Tatiana gets here, she'll show you another way to do it. There are a lot of ways. I'm just going to show you the couple ways I'm most familiar with. So, right now, basically all you need to know about this is it's bringing in an image. This is an image storage space. It's bringing that into image in, and then this is the video session. Basically, it's outputting where it's saved and an image. I'm going to go to Vision. That's not how you spell that. Assistant. I'm going to search for it. It's going to tell me where it is. I'm going to bring it over here. It's going to take a minute to install because this is basically a sub VI within this VI. So notice how once I pulled that up, I can't change anything in here because I have this labview open. Let's hope I can. There it is. And I'm not going to be able to get an image in here before it's connected to anything, so I'm just going to hope that it said finish without it doing anything. Let it, and it's going to take a minute to initialize or compile or whatever it calls compiling. Basically, if I want to have an image out, I have to copy this storage space and have another storage space. Otherwise, I'll be trying to save this image in the same place as this image, and that'll confuse the computer. I actually don't know if it'll work or not. So I'm going to bring this over to image destination, DST. I'm going to bring this image that we've got on this loop iteration. I'm going to take it, bring it into image in, and then I'll get this guy, bring it into image out. And this air loop, or this air line, I'm going to bring into air in, bring air out back down, and delete this middle part, so it's basically a loop. Hey Tatiana.
Yo, yo, yo.
I kind of went through once and calculated, or basically showed them how to set up the code. I'm going to upload that example later.
Alright, super.
And for the people who just showed up, I'm starting over again, so
Okay.
I don't know how you do your vision assistant stuff. So I'm going to go through a couple ways, and then at some point you want to add your way. That's cool.
I think there's like at least like 4 or 5 like valid ways.
Yeah, you can do edge detection. That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what I did.
Oh, really? I was going to say, I hate edge detection. I can't get it to work. So Tatiana will show you edge detection in a little bit.
Yeah. I'll watch you.
Yeah. So right now I'm going to open up Vision Assistant. Or actually, I want to finish, and it's gonna. It always goes away from LabView when you click finish. I actually want to run this once so that there's an image coming in. Run. Let's get the image so I see the yellow things. There we go. You might find you want to put something behind your setup like this piece of cardboard, so there is few as kind of other colors as possible. Also, depending on how you do it, you may find that the black or the silver on the linear actuator messes you up. I've actually seen some interesting workarounds to that. Some people actually put different colored tape all over these.
Or like you can go in and you can crop it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to show them how to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying there are other ways of doing that are more creative than what I'm about to do. So I'm going to stop it, and it's going to say this last image. It's going to bring it into Vision Assistant. Let's open this. Let's fit it to full screen. So the first thing you'll probably want to do is set an ROI. So we're going to go to a region of interest. So I'm going to double click on image mask. Say I want these 2 yellow things. Oh, before I go on, some people inevitably, even after us telling them not to a million times, will put their markers on those, like the 2 parts of the linear actuator. Don't do that because you won't get strain there. You'll just get how far the linear actuator is moved. You want to put them on the rectangular part of your dogfood specimen. In case anybody was unclear on that, I'm going to save you a lot of wasted time. So say I just want these 2. These are just here for now, just so I have something to find. So I want to extract everything, or basically mask everything here. If I say OK now, I'll still have this black box. And if I go back into image mask and click extract masked region, I'll only have the part I extracted. So the way SE likes to do this, I'm going to show you a couple different ways, is for doing a color plane extraction. So you can double click there. We can look at red, green, and blue, see what makes these yellow things we want the brightest or the most contrasted. I think it's green, just clicking on these. We can also do others based on value and luminance. But I think green makes these stand out the best. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to, basically I want turn this into a binary. It's grayscale right now, but I want it to be either yes, it's over this threshold, or no, it's not over this threshold. So I'm going to go to grayscale and find threshold. So now I can drag this slider back and forth until it's got mostly just what I want. So that looks pretty close. Yeah, there are really two things you can do. You can either make sure that every single frame of every single iteration you do, you only have 2 particles, which you'll find probably only works in a perfect world. Or you can just make sure that the noise particles are smaller than these and sort by area later. I'm going to hit OK, because I think that's good. Now, if we want to see this image, we can say finish now. And it should, where is this? Show here when we play, right?
Oh, what's going on?
I did something wrong. Oh, I know what I did. When I copied this image acquisition, I did not change the name. So basically it's saving over the same spot.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna call that 2. And we're gonna try again. So that image works. And it's still not, I think you have to do something else to make it show a binary image.
If you right click on it.
What?
If you right click on it.
Yeah?
Visible item. Or palette. Wait.
Oh, look at you.
He did it in class.
The student has become
Oh,
the teacher.
I missed that part. Alright, so there we have our binary image. I can move this around, you can see him move. That actually looks really good. I usually don't like color plane extraction because I can never end up make it look that good. But that works pretty well. So let's go back in here. And with this binary image, I want to analyze these particles, because right now it's still a giant matrix of zeros and ones. So I'm going to go to the binary toolbar and go to particle analysis. You're going to start out with, it's going to give you all of these measurements. I unclicked all of them except for center of mass X and area. You can do Y as well if you want and do a distance formula to calculate the distance, but I'm kind of making the assumption right now that everything's level and that nothing's going to be moving up and down, or if it is, it's not going to be to an amount that I care about. So right now, this is actually really good. We only have 4 particles. We can click on them, we can see the areas, the 2 biggest, and the other 2 are just 1 or 2 pixels. That is awesome. I can never get it to work that well when I do it that way. But basically we have the areas and center of masses. And I kind of wrote up here, kind of sloppily, when your output of this, it's going to be this array, but transposed. So instead of right here, it's measurement is the columns, or measurement is the rows, and the particle number is the column. The output of this function, unless you transpose it, is going to be the measurement is the column and the particle number is the row. Does that make sense? So I end up having to set up an indicator to confirm that every time, because I always forget, so that's why I remove the board. Once you select the measurements you want, I only wanted these for right now, I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to go to select controls. These are basically the inputs, these are the outputs. I want to say just number of particles and particle measurements. You don't really need number of particles, but I think it's interesting if we want to see it later. And we can click finish. And it's going to take us away, it's going to finish creating the VI, and now we have 2 extra outputs that we can create. Constant. No, not constant. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. create indicator, and this is going to be this array. So if we find an index array, say we want the center of mass of the first particle. We know the row number is number of particles, so, and the, oh, that was column, but we're going to make both of them 0 anyway, because we want the center of mass of the first particle, and we will create an indicator. Alright, it's going to be this one that says element. And this is basically the number of pixels to the left it is. Does that make sense, everyone?
What do you mean by number of pixels to the left?
From, yeah, so basically this is a giant grid of pixels where this is 0 and this is however many pixels there are, like 1280, I think.
I don't remember.
Something like that. But if I move this around, I can change basically where the x value is. If I put it really close to the side, it's going to get smaller. I can move it. Oh, well, now it doesn't see it anymore because I masked out probably 100 pixels worth on the side with my region of interest. But there we go. So you can basically, to get, if I want an array of all of the areas and all of the center of masses, right, I guess that'd be 2 arrays. Let's see, I would want only the first column. And I would want only the second column. So this would end up being, sorry, I picked the wrong thing. This is center of masses, and then this would be these are the same input. Basically, this is center of masses, and this is area. I can only label these wires once we do something with them. But, does that make sense? How I got that? Right now, I'm going to go back into a couple other ways to do this. So, I don't like color plane extraction, so I'm gonna delete everything past that. My favorite way to do this is by color threshold. It gives you a lot more control over what colors you keep and you don't keep. Basically, you have sliders for red, green, and blue, and you can do sliders for hue, saturation, and luminance as well. But basically, how I like to do this is sliding all of these to 255. One of those isn't. Alright. 255. And now I have everything highlighted. And I'm going to start cutting away from these, just sliding these around until they get rid of what I'm looking for, these 2 yellow dots. Actually, I guess I know that since when this was 253 they disappeared, that I want this to be pretty close to here. Oh, and I do that and they disappeared, so I want that back. And alright, here's the spot I care about then. I can keep sliding that around and I can get pretty accurate, usually. Why are they still splotchy? Where do I need to move this all the way up? Alright, and I think that's pretty good for right now. So I'm going to say OK. And then do the same thing we just did. Go to binary, particle analysis. It's going to remember the things I selected earlier. Say OK. I'm going to have to select controls again. And say number of particles, particle measurements. And then I can click finish. And now it'll still work the same. It's just, now it's finding this a little bit more, and you'll find, depending on the lighting and a couple other factors, and I guess which one your personal preference is, some will work better than others. Would you like to show what you use, or
For the measuring thing?
for how you find the particles?
I like to use the color threshold thing too.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought you said edge detection.
Yeah, so I do like that to get the dots, and then, but I don't, the way I get the links, I like don't use like the raw values basically. I use like something like edge detection in order to get like the actual L. So I can.
You gonna show them? Yeah. I've never used edge detection.
Yeah. So, like we just said, me and Alex, I now find out like to use the same thresholding tool.
I guess that's objectively the best then.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead. So you know,
It's only gonna not be in your.
so he thresholded everything pretty well. I'm just gonna get rid of this particle analysis really quick. That's like one way that you can do it. And so what you can do is, I think it's, here. Yeah, so there's like a bunch of different tools here that will like measure certain things about your particles. So there's this max clamp, clamp rate. You don't really want any of these kind of thing. But so I think when I coded this, I used, clamp rate. So we're gonna do that. And so it like measures, I think, the distance, or actually, no, I don't think I used that. Let's go back.
Maximize it, you can see the whole thing.
Yeah. Cancel. Yeah, so there's like a ton of like different stuff. Here we go. There's like a ton of different stuff you can use. So let's do this. Wait. Just kidding. I don't think it's this one either. There's like a ton of like different valid tools, but here's the edge detector thing I was talking about, which is one way you can do it. So basically, the way that you do that is all edges. I think you like draw a line or something, and yeah, this looks weird too. Yeah, so there's like a ton of different stuff you can use. Trying to think. So here, if you look at the clamp rate setup, there are like different ways that you can measure something. So there's this horizontal max caliper. But so in that case, that would like only measure basically the distance from like here to here and like here to here on like your particles, which is not something we're like really kind of interested in for these purposes. But if you look at this relationship of horizontal min caliper, it basically gives you the distance between two different edges. So if we really wanted to, we can have the distance between here and have it measured. So
Don't forget, everybody needs to have lab coats on.
Yeah. See?
Otherwise, we'll all get yelled at.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, and it's picking up basically two main edges. I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay, so everything looks good.
The edges that it's getting, is that like the left and the right of that box? Or is it like
So it should theoretically be this side and this side of this box. So there we go. I'm gonna click OK. Okay. So I'm gonna click OK. And then okay, here we go. So now it's finally, you might have to play around with some of these parameters a little bit for it to detect something. So basically, you see on this clamp rig, basically just like toggle around with these parameters a little bit, and it should change from current distance of 0 to current distance of something. So here you see that it's highlighting basically the green areas that it's detecting an edge, and you should see this kind of like red arrow thing where it tells you exactly what measurement it's picking up. So if we wanted to measure, like basically, let's say that like this was our sample and we wanted to measure the length, like this would be probably what we would like actually want to measure. So I'm gonna click OK. And then select controls. So from this clamp rate, you get edge coordinates calibrated, and then distance and distance calibrated. Since we really don't care about like the raw values of the edge coordinates, you can have that outputted just if you're like curious about what it's actually picking up. But I'm just gonna say for this instance, I really don't care too much. So I'm just gonna put distance and then have it finish. So now these things that Alex had are obsolete, and then okay, so this is clear. So now it just basically gives you basically one number that is like the certain length of or whatever. So I'm gonna connect this to an indicator quick just to see what it outputs. Okay. Now let's go. Which one is it? Alex,
it's the far right, sorry.
far right. Okay, that's fine. I got confused.
They're different things. They're not the same.
Okay, so here's our distance clamp rig. So we're gonna click run. Okay, so now we see instead of the matrices that we had before, it's basically only doing one distance. So let's say that.
They get closer. Oh.
Yeah. So now it's basically getting the raw distance between those two values. So going back to our VI, let's say that
You hit the wrong stop.
oh, sorry, yeah,
And
it's bad. You should do this stop button. But
because it
I think it messes with
if you
the
slide over all the way to the right,
yeah. I think it messes. Does it do something weird with the equipment or something? I forget.
no, or if you on the block diagram, you
Yeah.
slide all the way over to the right, and yeah, that's closing down the camera, and this is closing down the no, the load cell. This is the linear actuator. Almost done. Basically, if it doesn't close down, it won't start up the right way. Sometimes, depending on the hardware and the state or the part of this loop it's in. It's not as big of a deal right now when we have these things. In worst case scenario, you have to unreserve and re-reserve the station. But it's really bad when you're doing the Wiimote lab and you basically disconnect the Wiimote, and you can't disconnect it and then reconnect it on the control panel because you aren't an admin. So we have to get the IT guy come down here like 3 times a day, and he hates everybody when we get him to do that. So, and then basically all the Wiimotes won't work on the computer.
Yeah. So for like basically like mod 5 stuff, it could be really bad. And I think sometimes for this, it does like weird stuff with the hardware. But you didn't turn on the hardware, did you?
No, I did, but
I mean, we were.
it went. So.
Well, I don't think anything bad happened this time. But, okay, so, okay, cool, so we got distance now, but let's say, but we need to calculate strain, so, one way you can go about doing this is, so for LNAD, we really only want the first value that it's basically outputting in this loop. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we can just use something like a case structure, so we're going to go here, go to case structure. And then basically, so we need something, so we're going to have 2 cases of if something is true, we're going to make it our L not, and if something is false, then it's just basically another L that we're going to be using in order to calculate our L not, or calculate our string. And so I think one easy way to go about doing this is if this is the first time the whole loop is running, then whatever is coming out of this distance clamp is going to be our L not. So I'm going to want to make a logical statement about that. So I'm going to go here to Boolean, or not Boolean.
Comparison.
Comparison, yeah.
Down left.
Comparison, there we go.
It's interesting to see how different I do these than I do.
Yeah, I do things actually pretty complicated sometimes.
You should see mine. Basically, in one of those things is the example from earlier.
Yeah.
You probably want to save this when you're done. It's like basically put your name at the end.
Oh yeah, I'll
and
do
upload both
that.
of them to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
square so people can see different ways to accomplish the same thing. That might be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this handy dandy thing down here that's called loop iteration, which basically keeps track of how many times the loop has run, basically. So I'm gonna wire this here and say if this loop iteration is equal to 1. So that means if the loop has run for the first time, then we want to make this an L not. So I'm going to go in here, and I want to make, actually I'm going to do this a different way. I'm going to do this slightly easier. Instead of confusing everyone. I'm actually just gonna make an array.
There you go. That's what I do.
Aw, okay.
I run into the same problem you were about to run into.
Well, okay, so you can do it that way too, but you can just have it as an array. So I'm gonna do, what is it? Yeah, that's array. So basically, what we're gonna have to do is I'm gonna take this and is it top or bottom? I think
Might
it's,
usually put it in the bottom.
Yeah.
Chronological order.
yeah. So, but what we want to do is basically have this array that keeps growing with every iteration, that it has like basically all of our strings. So what you're going to do then is you're going to drag this over to the end of your loop. Click on it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, come on, work.
Is my heckling helping?
Huh?
Is my heckling you helping?
Yes. Add some pressure. Okay, so we're gonna go to tunnel mode, and or no, we're gonna go to replace with shift register, and then we're gonna go here and click on this other side. So basically, what this does is for every iteration, you have your distance coming through. It comes in and adds basically as an element to this array, and then what comes out the other side is whatever. So let's say at this point we had an array of 10. So of 10 elements. So this array of 10 elements is going to go through the while loop on this side, and then this whole shift register thing makes it come here to the other side. So that basically when we link this up, it basically brings back to this array those 10 elements. And then now, at the same time, it's going to add another one. So it's going to add 11 elements. So now the array is going to have 11 elements once it adds this one. And then so those 11 elements are going to go all the way here, come back around, come back into this array, 12, 13, 14, etc. So that's basically what it does. So now you can basically do your mathematical calculations and element indexing in order to calculate your straight values and graph them accordingly. So
You initialize the arrays. Do that.
yes. So I forgot how you do that. Help me.
Over there. Basically, if you don't do this,
Oh,
you
yeah.
right click, say create constant. I missed. Right click, create. Nope. Constant. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
And this is going to be basically, this is the symbol for a null array. It's a array of zeros that's dimension 0. So it starts out as nothing. Otherwise, it'll save, and then when you start up again, it'll start plotting your new data on top of your old data, and you don't want that. I right-clicked on the input of the shift register.
Yeah.
It said create constant. And that's the default constant.
So I'll redo that. So create. Yeah. So now you have basically a growing array of all your string values, and so once you have that, you can basically go like. I'll leave that up to you guys because there's actually a lot of ways you could possibly do that. But now you can basically, using mathematical calculations, convert it to an array of string values, which you end up having to plot at the end.
Or you can convert it to one string value.
Or one string.
And it ended up being easier for you probably.
Yeah.
Because of the way the notifiers work, you only want to output a single double. You don't want to output the whole array, so you just want the last value.
Did you talk to them about the notifiers?
I did. Was everybody here when I talked about notifiers?
Try that again.
Alright, we'll do
Yeah.
it again.
Okay, so basically, this code. Okay, so this is what confused me when I opened the code for the first time when taking this class. And so basically, if you look here, you have your raw force data, and then basically you have these things called notifiers here. And if you look, so these things kind of are your notifiers. And basically what they do is you input basically your force stress data and your distance strain data into these things. And basically it's telling the program, this is my distance data, this is my force stress data, and basically your program will register that. But what SE does when he gives you the code is that he basically gives you these placeholders of controls, or not even controls. Yeah, controls right here. So if you are thinking about it, that's not really right because you need calculated values to go into this program, basically. So kind of a hint is that basically you have this waveform that's going from your hardware that gives you your raw force data. So if you remember from module 1, it was basically converting waveform data into actual raw data that you can work with. So what I would kind of suggest is playing around with your hardware, kind of seeing what this waveform actually is, and then relating it to stress. So in the end, when you're doing your coding, you're basically going to have to delete these and then come up with a way to link your raw force data or your stress data and your strain data into these notifiers.
And then they'll shoot down to the bottom loop
Yeah,
where they'll be plotted.
So once these, you input your stress and strain into these notifiers, it's going to go down to this loop and graph your, I think this is stress and strain.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't even have to really worry about having to create your stress and strain plot because it's basically already done for you. But you have to worry about how you're going to input your stress and strain into these notifiers, basically.
Okay, so the values I need to go into those wires are stress and strain, in the correct, units or whatever, not like force or error or anything. They want actual stress and strain.
If you want to plot stress and strain, that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah. Also, like in your final plot, make sure you have units because if SE sees there's no units, like not gonna give you credit. Or he's
Or like
gonna be-
anybody sees no units, they're not going to give you credit.
Yeah. Exactly. So make sure you have your units on the actual graph.
Basically, the problem that these notifiers solve is the camera acquisition rate isn't the same as the force acquisition rate. So if you start taking them as fast as they as you get, or you start taking data points as quickly as you get them, you're not going to have the same number of stress points as strain points, so you won't be able to plot them. So what they do is if you scroll down to the last loop, every 100 milliseconds this loop runs, and it takes the last strain or distance, and it takes the last stress that have been calculated, and it brings them in here together to basically ensure that stress and strain have the same number of data points and they correlate with each other.
Yeah. So it's basically just making sure that they match up.
Did that clear that up? Does everybody know how the program structure works now?
Yeah. So basically, like, you know, a lot of it's already done for you. It's having you plot stress versus strain. But the one thing you have to worry about is how are you going to get your strain values and how are you going to manipulate this waveform in order to get your stress values. So, you guys, does anyone have any questions about that?
Can you scroll down?
Yeah.
The thing that's really just throwing me off a little, like, because I want to make sure that we don't put the wrong values into our graph. Is like down there, like how it says distance and force. I don't know if they're referring to strain or stress.
Yeah,
So what comes into those values down there? Whatever you put up there,
Yeah.
and they're plotting it there. So it could be distance, strain, force, stress, and you can do the calculation from distance to strain up here, and from force to stress up here, or you can do this down here. It doesn't matter. But whatever you put into those guys will come down there and will be plotted like that, unless you do the
stuff in
math
this
right
thing.
here,
Yeah.
or to this array.
Yeah. But typically, I think I found it easier just to do just do
Absolutely.
everything within these loops, basically.
Save yourself a headache of trying to figure out which wires are which.
Yeah. Or wait, and also for this one, do they need the the conversion unit for this one? Or the
50 pounds per 30 millivolts.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's
Should we? Maybe I'll make that like a sticky in this thing. I don't know how you do.
It's also in the module information thing.
Is
on
it? Okay,
Canvas.
cool.
Yeah.
Then JK.
Yeah.
And this automated stress strain curve is due in the lab.
When's it due, Alex? I'm like not.
The end of lab, yeah.
Yeah, end of lab this coming week.
So
Yeah.
why do the people who have Thursday lab get 3 more days to do it?
Well, why do the Tuesday lab people have 4 more days to write their paper than the Friday lab people?
They don't.
They do.
It's due the same day.
Yeah, but you have your lab first.
You can always come in.
Everything's not built. If you want to find a way to make everybody's lab on the same day, go for it. But
That's what these do on the same day.
they are due on the same day. Basically, the people with earlier labs have more time.
3 less days to do it outside of lab.
No. For the same time from the day you start. Yes. But then you have more time before your
Well, you get to
papers
do
due on
your
Sunday.
pre-lab and stuff earlier and get feedback so you can work on it earlier than anyone else.
Right. Basically, you have 7 days from your lab section to get it done.
And so it's due this.
Other people don't have.
Yeah.
Basically, Friday lab people didn't get feedback from their pre-lab until today. So it's kind of hard to start working on it before that.
It's just hard when we don't have
What?
this, like, actually going through the actual BIS.
Yeah, this is like a starting point for
idea what the
everybody.
BIS
This is today. We didn't really
It's
know.
like, I tried to work with my group yesterday, and like, you can't, you don't have this information. So,
That's true.
It would be
we
different if you
technically
went
can't
over
work
this
on
in
it
class.
until we get to this. So then we have
I mean, you can ask your TA, you can ask SE in your lab section. It's kind of what your lab section's for. No. That
Yeah.
We ran into this problem last semester too. When we should do this, and I started doing it on Mondays, but nobody came on Mondays.
Like we
So we
use
started doing it on
things as
Fridays.
like controls and then just like do the graphic.
Right.
Well, so the graphing is already done for you right here.
I mean the like the image acquisition, visualization stuff.
Yeah, so you can do that all.
So we don't have to get that done by our lab. We just need
I think I'm a little bit confused. Wait,
okay, so we need the image acquisition, like the vision assistant set up.
so you need to have your stress strain curve working by lab this week in order to get your credit
By the end of lab this
by
week.
the end of lab this week.
So you have your lab section to work on it, which
But I would highly not recommend like having to do the entire code in your lab.
you can do most of it in 3 hours for sure.
Yeah. So probably my recommendation would be like get your make sure that if you have force data that it would be working by the time you get in the lab, and then maybe just deal with optimizing your image stuff in the lab,
Right.
perhaps. And also another recommendation, probably over the weekend, if you're planning on just doing your image stuff during lab this week, just like over the weekend, maybe go out and get, like some neon tape or something, because usually I find that works the best. Like, so Alex.
color that'll point out or that'll stand out from purple.
Yeah. So usually.
But the gloves are purple.
Yeah. So usually, like most neon-ish colors kind of work for that. So we used yellow right here. Yellow's good. So it's like hot pink. I thought hot pink worked for that.
My TA, when I took the class, was named Jackson, and he was an artist as well. And he decided, based on complementary color theory, that goldenrod was the best color to use, and he swore by goldenrod. I prefer neon green because it's the opposite if you use optics theory. But I've had the best results with neon green, but that's just me. I've had it work with red. I've made it work with dark green. I've made it work with blue.
Yeah, I used hot pink for our code, and that worked.
I think it's your tape I stole one time.
Oh yeah, probably. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not mad. Yeah. So. Any other lingering questions?
I guess I mean, like, it seems pretty not straightforward, but after you guys walk through it, I kind of have an idea of how I would tackle it.
Yeah.
But what are like problems or roadblocks you might run into when we actually get it trying to run in real time?
I'm trying to think. Sometimes, I feel like sometimes a lot of the time it's vision assistant kind of goops up. Like, if you have any, so like, if you look in your vision assistant, sometimes, like, if you don't threshold it exactly just so, you get like these extraneous kind of particles.
Every now and then, anytime the lighting changes, or really if I were to move this, actually that's not taking video, or that work. But if I were to move that, or something would change, I'd have to go in and just
Redo,
re-threshold everything. And
Yeah.
I'll actually do that probably 4 or 5 times over the course of taking data.
Yeah, and like, so like sometimes if you get these extraneous particles, like as the clamp rake is like measuring it, it'll like start picking. So I like did it so I was trying to not have these extraneous particles, but like sometimes like it'll just get in there somehow, and then like all of a sudden instead of like having a length of like 200 or something, it's giving you like a length of 80, which messes up your strain value. So, but that just comes down to a matter of thresholding and like how you position your camera, how you position like whatever you're doing to like maybe minimize that. But that's just like something like Alex was saying, like you kind of like the day of, like even if you did this outside a lab and it worked perfectly, the lighting might change, or like something else might change, like your camera might change. So like you might just have to like manually go back in and readjust some things.
When I took the class, I ended up just changing the color of tape like 5 minutes before the demo and re-thresholding because for some reason I couldn't. Red stopped working for me.
Yeah.
So I went to another color like 5 minutes before the demo, re-thresholded it, and it worked. One thing I would stress for y'all, especially kind of like especially if you're planning on doing a good part of this in the lab, is I think it's very doable to do almost all of this in the lab if you have like a very detailed plan. I still wouldn't recommend it. I'd probably work on it a good bit before that, but I would probably make a full flowchart. I don't know, the flowcharts I've seen, the couple of sections I've looked in, none of them have been extremely detailed. They've all been fairly top level. I mean, I didn't see anything like overtly wrong with any of them, I don't think. But they've been very top level. Like, we're gonna say we're gonna get the stress, we're gonna get the strain, we're gonna calculate those, and then we're gonna plot. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's not very, like, basically, do what you would do, basically every wire, or every one of these functions, kind of have a box on your flowchart for that. That's something that really helps me, especially with coding LabView, not as much MATLAB, but it really helps me like understand what I'm going to do next, how I'm going to get from point A to point B. Like write down like a very detailed flowchart. Actually, if you want to look at a flowchart that you wrote, send it to me this weekend, and I'll do my best to look at it. And like I said earlier, I don't know if I said it before, everybody came in here at 3 o'clock. I'm really jealous. People came for you, like a lot more people came for you.
More love.
I started at 1:40. I don't every week, but I did this week because this is a lot harder than saying like, all right, you still have worms.
Well, like, so even, I mean, like, I don't know, I'm like kind of a nerd. I like kind of really like LabView, even though everyone like hates LabView, but
That's why they put us in charge.
but like,